All right, guys, welcome in. It is another Book Talk day. We are here again with the amazing Diana Rodriguez Wallach, the author of Small Town Monsters, of Hatchet Girls, and of course the newest book, The Silenced, which
You got the box set.
which look, I'm going to be honest with you. This made me cry, and I don't like crying. Chapter 3 of this book hurt me. This book hurt.
Oh, I love to hear that. Is that weird?
A little, but as an author, when I have some friends who was just like, "Why'd you do that to me?" I'm like, "Cause I needed to." The Silence is amazing. I'm not gonna try to like give you a giant ego and say it's the best book you've written, but it's the best book you've written.
Thank you.
It's an amazing
keep
book.
Getting better with each book. I mean, each new book needs to be the best book you've ever written.
I think it's a fair assessment. One of the things I absolutely loved about this book is your attention to detail of the story that you have. So, for those who don't know Diana and don't really know her story, she used to actually be an investigative journalist.
I did. I was a reporter back in the day.
Yeah. So, give us a little scoop on the troubled teen industry as a whole, because that's what this book is about. For those who have not read it, it is about a girl who stumbles into an abandoned building on the grounds of a troubled teen home school kind of thing, and then is possessed by one of the people who didn't make it out of the school, and all of the horrible things that happened in between that. So, for those who also don't know, this is based on a real place. Real place, real types of stories, all of that kind of stuff. So, one of the part that I love about this, and if you read The Silence at the end, she actually does go through a lot of all the processes and things like that. So, without really spoiling a ton of it, how did you come about this, and give us like the steps and everything that came before?
So I grew up outside of Philadelphia in Ridley, and in high school we used to play a school called Glen Mills in sports. Particularly, Glen Mills was a boys' reform school, and we played them in football, we played them in basketball, and it's not that far away from where I grew up. I was in Ridley, I was in Garnet Valley, both are in Delaware County. They're both in Delco, and you just sort of had this vague understanding that boys were sent to Glen Mills. They were sent there. But I didn't really give too much thought into how or why, that they had done something wrong. I didn't think about it until 2018. The Philadelphia Inquirer came out with this whole expose on Glen Mills and exposed the decades of abuse that went on at the school. And it was so bad that it ultimately got the state to come in and shut down the school in 2019. And that's when I first started thinking, like, man, I would love to do a YA horror novel in a reform school. That was where the idea first came from, because so many people in my community know of Glen Mills, but it was a school for boys. I didn't feel like it was necessarily my story to tell. I didn't want to be limited to what exactly happened at Glen Mills either, or talk about the Pennsylvania judicial system in particular. And then it was 2020 when Paris Hilton came out with her documentary about her time in the troubled teen industry. And I think that really blew the doors open on the troubled teen industry for a lot of people. Even the survivors I've spoken to from troubled teen programs, the advocates that work at nonprofits trying to shut them down, Paris Hilton coming forward changed everything, because she went into detail about the abuse that she suffered in Utah, Wyoming. Like, she was in a number of different programs, most notably Provo Canyon, which was an academy in Utah. She was strip searched. They watched her shower. Yeah, they watched her shower. They force-fed her medication. They put her in solitary confinement naked. All of this stuff. Her mother didn't know any of this until she came forward in 2020. And she was also kidnapped from her bedroom, which is the chapter 3 that you talk about. And Paris talks about this being the most traumatic thing that she went through. She still has nightmares to this day. And her mom saying, like, I had no idea. And so many kids have come forward just recently telling their stories, often to not only the world on social media, but to their families for the first time, because you couldn't write letters home, you couldn't call them. Once you were out, you were just so happy to be out that you didn't want to rock the boat and risk being sent back in there. So they just never talked about it. And this sort of blew the door open. I was like, well, this is now a story I can tell. I can take these real reform schools, which is Glen Mills, which is the boys' school. Slayton Farm was the girls' school, and apply the troubled teen industry to them so that they are private institutions where parents send their kids there. So it makes it a little bit more timely and topical to what kids are going through today. And it also allows me a little bit more creative freedom, that I don't have to be limited to what would happen in an actual juvenile detention center. And I can instead also incorporate what happens in these troubled teen programs as well.
I mean, that does make sense, because I remember like, do you remember like Jenny Jones and who was the other one? There was every morning TV show, every morning like talk show, they would have like that episode, like Maury would have that episode where it was just like, oh, we're gonna bring out your troubled teen, and then we're gonna have this like drill sergeant come up and yell at them, and then we're gonna kidnap them and take them to this place.
Yes.
And it's like, at the time, it's like, oh, that's funny kind of thing. And then you're reading this book and you're like, oh my God, that is the most traumatic thing that has ever happened to these people.
Yeah, and what I learned through this was, I mean, Pennsylvania has its own history with juvenile detention that I can get into specifically. But the troubled teen programs are most heavily concentrated in Utah, Wyoming, Montana, because these are the states that have the least amount of regulations. So these are the states where these programs can open up, and they're not sending anybody to monitor what's going on there. There's no state representative to make sure you're feeding them right, and the kid, you know,
Or
it's a
feeding them
safe
at all.
environment or any of this. So these kids, and once the school does get shut down, if it does get shut down, there are no repercussions usually for the owners and the facilitators running them, that they immediately just reopen a new program just under a different name. And so it's an ongoing business. It's like up to 200,000 kids per year in America are sent to these programs. They cost $5,000 to $30,000 per month, which is
Jesus.
just an astronomical amount of money. Some of it is covered by the state, some of it's covered by insurance. So they convince these parents that it must be good because we're footing the bill. Usually a kid's time in these detention centers or these wilderness programs is based on the parent's ability to pay. So Paris Hilton was gone for over a year because her parents could afford to pay. You know, like that's how long you're there. You're not reformed. You're not going through therapy. You're not healed. It's how long until your parents go broke. They like teach you how to mortgage your house, like and do all of this stuff to help save their kid.
Mm-hmm. And you talked about them popping back up. Like Glen Mills is like reopening.
Oh
right?
my God, that was really depressing. Even just what I've learned about the Pennsylvania reform schools since I wrote the book. So when I wrote the book, Glen Mills had been shut down, and so I actually went on Facebook and I said, hey, does anybody know anyone who worked at Glen Mills or anything? And it was my neighbor who literally lives two doors down who said, no, but I worked at Slayton Farm, which was the girls' school, and I had never, ever heard of it. And so I went for the first time to visit Slayton in 2023, and that's the abandoned property that serves as like the focal point for the book. Like all these farmhouses and stuff look exactly like that on land owned by William Penn. It goes back to like 1826. Down the road was Glen Mills. I tried to pull up to Glen Mills, and this was when it was still shut down. As soon as my car pulled into the parking lot, someone came out to tell me to leave. The place was empty, but they had a security guard. The lawns were mowed. It's beautiful brick buildings. It's got a clock tower, a beautiful stone church. You would tell someone it was Swarthmore College, and they would believe you. Like, that's how pretty it was. And they were maintaining it as if they thought the boys were going to come back at any minute, and it turned out they were right. By the time I finished writing the book, I was in the very last round of copy edits. Like, we're talking that proofreading round where you're not even supposed to change a comma unless it's egregious. And the last proofreader circled that section in the book where I talk about the truth. And she said, I think the school reopens. And I was like, no, it didn't. And it did. It reopened that past year. No press release, no ribbon cutting, not an article in the Daily Times, which is the Delco newspaper, absolutely nothing. And I was sort of shocked. So we changed it. And coincidentally, my daughter plays volleyball. And we are looking for summer programs. This is past summer for her to go do like a
Oh
volleyball
God.
summer camp. One of them was being held on the Glen Mills school property at their gymnasium. And I turned to my daughter, I was like, we're signing you up. I was like, well, I'm driving you to Glen Mills. I don't care if it's 30 minutes away. I was like, so I was like, they have to let me on the property then, because it's now reopened. They have 7 employees working there that used to work at the old school, which is very depressing. There was a reporter from Mainline Today who figured that out. They had to pay a lawsuit. They had to pay money to the state in order
Hmm.
to get to reopen. I go there to drop my daughter off. My husband drops her off in the morning, and I said, hey, see if you can figure out where the cemetery is, because I had heard that there was a cemetery on Glen Mills's property. And my husband looks up on Google Earth, and he's like, I think it's right behind the gym where we're dropping her off. So I go to pick her up. I park in the parking lot, and yes, literally, here's the gymnasium. There's a parking lot, and it's right behind the gymnasium next to a cell phone tower, and like the electrical mechanical stuff that you use to operate a building, that's usually like fenced off with like a
Hmm.
chain link fence. That's where the cemetery is. That's what it borders. Like, it's
Jesus.
really, really depressing. Half the graves don't even have any names or
Hmm.
markers or anything's on them. They go back to the 1800s, but they don't go past the 1980s, which I think is suspicious because the school shut down in 2018. And eventually they just have like a monument that kind of says to all the boys who died while in the care of the Glen Mill School for Boys. Like, for the rest of you, like, I don't even think they have any concept of how many boys are probably buried,
They probably
however
don't.
many feet. No. No.
And that's probably one of the reasons why it was probably easier to reopen the school rather than demolish it, because they didn't want to dig.
That is my theory for Slayton. So Slayton has been sitting abandoned for 25 years, okay? And it is in the Garnet Valley School District, which, if you know Pennsylvania, that is one of the top 10 school
Hmm.
districts in the state of Pennsylvania. It is a very high performing school district. So to have 350 acres sitting abandoned for 25 years is just shocking to me. And if you go through some of the legal filings, you'll see that like Toll Brothers, which is that big suburban developer of like McMansions, has been trying to buy it since 2010. They have been in court trying to buy it all these years, and it's just been stopped and stopped and stopped. And I asked someone who was a survivor of the Troubled Teen program, Meg Applegate. I think I have her book. Now, let me give her a plug. She now runs a nonprofit called Unsilenced. And here, I'll give her a shout out. Runs a nonprofit called Unsilenced that is dedicated to shutting down these programs. And when I said, why do you think Slayton Farm has been sitting abandoned for 25 years? Her first response was, did they find the bodies yet?
Hmm.
She's like, there's no way that a school that's been open since 1822, that had forced labor, the girls were forced to work the farm for 6 hours a day, every day, up through the 1970s. She's like, they would have seen a lot of death, a lot of death. There's a cemetery somewhere, they just don't know where it is. So that's my creepier theory of why it's been sitting abandoned. The practical theory is that it straddles two townships. They can't agree what to do with it. Um, my other theory is this one was just recent. When I went back over the summer and I was like exploring Slayton, I did a live there. I think you joined. I was on that live, and
Hmm.
so I'm walking around the property, and there was a guy mowing the lawn who kind of like sort of chased me out,
He
and he was
did.
like trying to like push me
He was
out to
just
my
kind of
car.
herd you. He was like he's trying to herd you
Yes,
in that direction. Just like
yes.
he was like remowing the same area, the same patch, just kind of like just not telling you it's like you need to get out of here, but like kind of just nudging it in the
Nudging
direction.
of my car. So I get to my car and I stop filming, and I tell him what I'm doing, and he was very nice and he had so many questions. And I asked him the exact same questions. He said he's been mowing the lawn for 20 years. And I said, well, it's paid for by Elwyn, which, if you know, it's a school for kids with disabilities that it owns a lot of campuses in Delaware County. That's who pays him to mow the lawns. And I said, well, why do you think it's been abandoned? And he said, and he's an older man, he's like, if you think about it, going back to the 1820s, like, why would a girl be sent to a school for delinquent girls? He's like, I think for a long time, this was a school for girls who were pregnant. And he's like, so my concern is it's not just where the bodies, he's like, that there are babies
Mhm.
buried here.
Well, that
And I was
happened
like,
in
oh,
that happened in Canada. Like you had the reform schools in Canada where like they sent First Nation children to
oh my
like be
God.
converted, and they
Yeah.
like very recently, like within the last 5 years, they're like, oh, we found 300 bodies.
Yes. Yes.
So
What happened to the Native Americans up in like Canada is absolutely horrific. And the amount of bodies, yeah, that
mhm.
they have found buried in those schools is awful.
And like that, those laws changed like a decade ago.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So
uh,
I think that there are several reasons why it's sitting abandoned. I'm curious whether Toll Brothers will ever win out and what happens when they try to stick the excavator in the ground.
yeah, no, my personal feeling, there's just unmarked bodies. It's much
Yeah.
like your book, much like your book. You're like, oh wait, look, we stumbled onto this graveyard that no one wants to see.
Yes, and I try to incorporate, so the campus kind of incorporates the legends of both schools. So the exterior of the farmhouses very much look exactly like Slayton, and a lot of the spray paint is exactly ripped from the walls of Slayton. But I also incorporated the tunnels that run under Glen Mills. That is a real thing. So if you read the book, as you get farther along, you will find out that there are tunnels. And that is something that exists under the Glen Mills property. And going back to the 1800s, they were built for very practical reasons. Like someone could get from one building to another in inclement weather and not have to go outside. That
Mhm.
was the theory for it. But if you read the Inquirer articles and the testimonials from the boys who were at Glen Mills, the tunnels is where the majority of the abuse happened because no one could see you there. There were no
Mhm.
cameras there. And that was where the most like essay and just physical abuse occurred down in those tunnels.
Chat is going crazy. One is watched a Netflix documentary on the girls talking about the experiences of the program. One is just like, what the fuck? like, like, is this real? Like, yes, this is very real. Like, the
Yes, the
book is fiction,
program.
but it is
Yes,
very
the
much based
program
on
on
real
Netflix.
stuff.
I love the program on Netflix, and it did remind me a lot of Slayton because in that documentary, they take kids who had been at this academy and they go back and explore it, now abandoned, and they're finding their files in the cabinets. Like they like someone just up and left all of their personal information in these files. The first time I went to Slayton was in 2023. At that point, the buildings were mostly boarded up. The plywood was pulled away off of windows for me to look through. And if you went farther back in the campus, you could see some doors were open. And at that point, there were still computers. And this is 2023. There were still computers in there, blackboards, tons of filing cabinets, tons of books, tons of files. When I went back in 2024, just like a year and a half, maybe later, all of the plywood was gone. And I walked directly into the church, and all of those files, I mean, it was just ransacked. Like, it was everywhere. All of these papers, everything was like the computers were gone, the chandeliers were pulled down, the organs was destroyed. It was amazing to see how much vandalism happened in just a 2-year span of time. But like the school, when I spoke to my neighbor who briefly worked there, he was a graduate student at Penn, and he was sent, and this is even more depressing, he was a social worker sent to Slayton to work with this kids who were in the foster care system, kids who had done nothing wrong, but the state of Pennsylvania had nowhere else to put them, so they just sent them to a reform school. So these foster kids were in a reform school for no reason other than not having a family to go home to. And it was, yes, oh my
That's a
God, on the
church.
picture. Yes, yeah. It was so it was, he had an interesting perspective, and I asked him, I was like, why was all this stuff left behind? He said when they shut down in 2001 for financial reasons, there was no warning. The staff basically was like, came in on Monday and they're like, guys, this is it. We're out of here. And they just walked out and left everything there. Yeah.
That's crazy. So, I've joked with you about this a lot, and the chat doesn't know about it, but I've joked about you a lot. I'm surprised you have not been possessed yet. Because you, again, the journalist in you, you go to all these places, including Slayton Farms, and you take pictures, and like I said, I showed you the pictures of the brochures, a lot of the swag that you made for this book. You go to these places, and it's just like, this is how you get possessed.
Honestly, when I was walking around most recently, so the first 2 times I went by myself, so I didn't go very far into the buildings because of
Why?
that reason.
You've
You know?
seen horror movies. This is why you
Like,
you don't go by yourself.
I know. I was by myself, and it was the middle of the day. In my fairness, it was bright and sunny, but still, like, I walked into a couple of the buildings that were wide open to take some video, but I didn't really fully go in. The last time when I took all of those pictures that you have and then I used for my swag materials, if any of you want the swag, you can still order from Children's Book World in Haverford, and I will include the swag with the signed copy. All of those postcards and pictures were taken the last time I went. I brought my husband. All the plywood was gone. Yes, that's
Up to the
I
farm.
went up that staircase.
Yeah,
So I
no, that's why you don't go up the staircases. That's why.
the staircase. So
She made a
that's
postcard.
exactly in the book. Yes, so that's exactly in the book. In the opening scene, my character goes into that main farmhouse, and that's the building that I'm in, the building with the pillars in the front. She goes in there and goes up the staircase and then falls through a roof. So I go into that pillar building, I go up the creepy staircase, and when I tell you, the ground was so spongy. The idea that you could fall through a roof was a little too accurate, to the point where I didn't know if it was safe for me and my husband to be walking on at the same time. Like, I don't
No,
think
the
that
answer is
this
no.
could hold both of our weights for very long. Like,
I
yeah.
do love some of the swag that you made. You actually made a brochure for the church, or I mean for the place. It was like, hey, send your children here. Everything's fine. Everything's
That
fine.
was- And that was based on a real brochure for Slayton Farm. So
Oh, I
my
bet.
my neighbor who worked there still had like one of the like last brochures from there, and he gave it to me. So the tagline that's on that brochure that you have, it says something like a turning point since like 18 whatever. That is the actual slogan from Slayton Farm. It said on the front of the brochure, like a turning point since 1820, whatever. All right, and this is, oh, this one up. You can see. That's some of the graffiti to give you a sense of like all of the graffiti in there, which was just insane. It was actually kind of pretty in some respects. There were a lot of penises though. A lot of penises, a lot of go birds, a lot of Big Dick Nick, if you know the Eagles, that the time period that this must have been made, and then like 666 and like pentagrams and like the epigraph on the book is it says, "For your sins the baby will suffer," and that's pulled off the wall of the church at Slayton Farm. That it said there's some really good ones.
That I think that is the most unique Philly thing in the world. You're going to go vandalize a building that had so much heartache, but also go birds.
Go birds, Big Dick Nick, yes.
Big Dick Nick, go birds.
Yeah. That's staircase.
By the way, shout out to Officer Kelsey and Officer Selleck. I caught them this time immediately. I was just like, yep, I saw those.
And there's one more. There's one more that's a little bit more obscure in this one. So my husband's brother coincidentally knows Brent Selleck. All right. So he, because we're in Philadelphia and he still lives in like the Westchester area. And Brent Selleck's best friend is a former Eagles player, Todd Harrimans. And so I've been to, Todd Hermans was a linebacker, one of the big guys. So I've been to a lot of events with the two of them. So in the book, there's a guidance counselor named Mr. Harrimans. And
I missed that one.
When I tell you how big a football player is in real life, both of these men, Brent Selleck and Todd Harrimans, are unrecognizable if you look at their football weight. They both lost at least 100 pounds, like based on like less than their football weight. And when I tell you, like, I'm 5'8", and the height differential was like this. Like they are towering, and they just absolutely monstrous people. And to know that they once weighed 100 pounds more than that, I can't even begin to imagine what they looked like when they were actually playing. Like you would notice them. Like you can't not notice them. If you were to run into an Eagles player on the street, you would see them from a mile away. That's how
Yeah.
big they are in real life. Yeah.
I've run into a couple players, and like I'm 6 foot even. So like
Yeah.
I've walked up to them and it was like, hey, and I'm like,
Oh my
what?
God.
Like,
Yes. Oh, like I went to a benefit like about a year ago, an Eagles benefit for autism, and Jason Mailata was there. And he's like one of their current linebackers, the guy from, I think he's like Australian. He's the biggest of them all. And it's honestly hard to wrap your head around, like,
mm,
seeing him in person and just like the absolute monstrous size of him. It's not even just like a basketball player where he's enormously tall, like 6'8" or something. It's just the width of them
yeah,
in
he's a brick
addition to
wall.
it. Yes. But I like to put their names in all my books. They're in every single one of them. You'll find them. Yeah.
I did. Like I said, when we were talking about Hatchet Girls, I missed them, and then when you're like, well, the next one's gonna be, I was looking for it, and I was looking for it, and then when I saw Kelsey and Selleck, I'm like, haha, I found them.
But if you'll notice, I made Kelsey a 6 foot tall blonde
Hmm.
woman. So it's actually my nod to Kylie. Yeah.
I mean, that works too.
Yeah.
So again, I love what you do with your books. I love how how real they feel. Reading your books is also so much fun getting to know all the things that went into it, and I love that you put that at the end of the books. So that way it's just like, oh yeah, by the way, here's all the real stuff that happened. We learned last time that you were here about Lizzie Borden and things, and I love the realism that you put in here. So I do remember you talking about this. What do you have coming up? And are you coming down the street?
I am. I am. It was definitely sparked by your idea on our last conversation. I've been wanting to dive into witches for a long time, but Salem is so overdone. Like it's so oversaturated. Everyone's
Mhm.
written about Salem. There's nothing new to do on that. So you had brought up the idea that there was this one witch in New Jersey that was,
Oh, there
tried
was more
and
than one. There was more
tried
than
and
one.
executed. Yes, and has all the legends around her grave. And I thought that was really cool. And it kind of led me down a rabbit hole because I'm from Ridley. There was a lone witch in Ridley Creek State Park that was also tried, and like someone wrote a book about her. So I'm going into the history of, it's going to be set in New Jersey. It's going to be set in New Jersey, and I'm going to incorporate a lot of the legends surrounding that particular witch's grave, because what's interesting about the New Jersey witch is they know where she's buried. They
Mhm.
know at least she's buried in that cemetery. I think they're not sure which plot is hers at this point because the tombstone was like removed, and that's
A
part of
lot
the
of them
urban
are
legend.
not covered or not.
Yeah,
There's like there are stone slabs over them, but they are not.
yeah.
There's not a tombstone with the slab.
Yes. And then, whereas in Salem, most of those bodies were dumped like in a mass grave somewhere in the woods. They don't know where they're buried. There are just monuments for them in town. So I think it's interesting that I could, incorporate the legends, not just of her, but around her grave. But as I was sort of going into the history of witches, because I'm not scared of a witch. I don't think the witch is scary. I think it is the men who accused women of being a witch. That's what's scary, that you could just be accused of something, and how do you disprove that you're a witch? And it was like, we'll try to drown you, and if you were drowned, then you must have been innocent. Our bad. Like you're so if you go back like to like the 1400s, you can see the witch trials go around the world and follow what's happening in the world at that time. And currently, there are still witch trials going on. Most of them are in Africa or in parts of Asia that are more impoverished. And these witch trials are used to basically steal a woman's land. So, like, she's married to somebody, he dies, and now the land goes to her, and her son-in-laws or brother-in-laws accuse her of being a witch to get her executed so they can take that property away from her. And this
That's
happens
horrible.
routinely currently in all of these countries. And so it's interesting to follow this pattern move all around the world about how the word witch is used against women, not just to disparage them, but like in a legal sense, to like remove opposition to something that we want. Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you do come down to Greenwich, let me know. It's only like 3 miles that way. So
Oh my God.
I'll come hang out. I'll show you where a lot of the unmarked graves are, because there's a lot of them.
Yeah,
There's so many unmarked graves.
Right. It would probably be closer to like a whole, like next summer. So I have to turn in a draft of this book by spring. And I usually write the draft sight unseen, me just imagining what I think it looks like. So then when I go to visit the location, I know the exact scenes that I need to find, and I know the exact walk I need to make, you know. So in, you know, Hatchet Girls, very famously, like Mariella walks from the Lizzie Borden house like to her house, and I made sure I made that walk and I could accurately describe it. And so those are things that you can only do after you've written the first draft, you know. So it's nice to come, you know, and incorporate all of that, you know, the vibes and the atmosphere and the accuracy once I know the story.
That's a really interesting way to write a book.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool. I love that idea. But yeah, next summer, I'll go. Like I said, we will hang.
Yes.
I am really looking forward to that. It's like I absolutely love your writing. Everybody is like chiming out on Twitch how they love your writing. They love how you interpret real information and create a very visceral reaction to what is writing. Like I said, also shout out to your audiobook narrator.
Oh my gosh. A couple people have said that to me, to the point I just finally got it, like this week. I finally got my copy. I'm like the last person to hear it, and all these people are raving about her.
Yeah, just skip to chapter 3 and just you will feel the pain that you caused in that book.
I haven't listened to it yet. I'm going to skip to it because that is actually a chapter that I added in. That was not in the first draft of the book. And I had was doing probably my next round of revisions with my editor, and she had wanted me to add some more substance to the beginning of the book in Hazel's point of view. And I'm like, well, I don't want the reader to have to wait too long to see the 1995 point of view. When I interviewed Meg, one of the things that she said was her most traumatic experience was being kidnapped from her room. Paris Hilton said the exact same thing. It came up a lot in the testimonials. So if you go to the nonprofit unsilence.org, you can read testimonials, which is something that I did. Specifically reading the testimonials from the 1990s and the early 2000s, so I could get a sense of what was going on at that time period. And they kept talking about this kidnapping, and that's why I added it in there, because it seemed to be something that really lingers with the adult survivors, that they haven't gotten past, that they genuinely thought they were being trafficked and that they were being kidnapped and they were being they were going to be sexually assaulted, and here their parents paid these people to do this to them is just bonkers. They're in the house. The parents have to be in the house while they do it, but they're not allowed to intervene. And so then at the very last minute, you see your mom was there the whole time as you're screaming and crying and thinking you're about to be SA'd. And that horror just sticks with them forever.
That was the gut punch. Oh, it wasn't just all the things going on. It was like that last moment when she turns and sees her parents, and I'm like, ugh. It was amazing writing, writing, because like I said, I've cried at books. I've cried at books. I've cried at the end of books. I didn't cry at chapter 3. That was such a just a rough chapter. Shut up with Lola, Rose. we have a running joke about another YA thriller that we have that it's been months. It's been we're talking March February, March for this book, and we still talk about the twist in the book, and it still to this day hurts. But yeah, but that was washed over because we had a new pain, and that was chapter 3 of this book. It's so well done. So I love your writing. I love everything you do. You come at writing with such a very unique angle, and we appreciate that. And I hope you realize that your readers genuinely appreciate how much that is brought out in the story.
Oh, thank you. I do love seeing that. Like, that's usually one of the common refrains that I see and I appreciate so much is when people say, like, I'm impressed by the amount of research that went into this novel. And I always say that at events. I was like, most young adult novels don't include a works cited page. You know what I mean?
They don't.
Like, that is the journalist in me that, you know, that I like and I've done it for like 6 books now, like take something that's real and twist it, you know, that take that inspiration from real life, because face it, what we're living through, what all of us are living through, is probably worse than most of us can imagine. So there's plenty of inspiration to draw from.
Yeah, there definitely is.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the marketing of this book, because like while I loved Hatchet Girls, the marketing blitz that seemed to be coming from you on The Silenced seemed to be like next level and was amazing. Like I loved every time you came up with something new, I was like, I love that. Like I made postcards for the last volume of Campfire Ashes, because like that's such a great idea. So, like my postcards is like I go to areas that have inspired stories, and I take pictures with the book there also, and it's basically like greetings from whatever place that was. So talk to us about like what you felt, how you came about the marketing for The Silence, because again it was a lot. And
It was a lot. So I'll give a little plug that I have a podcast called The Paper Trail, and it's me and 2 other traditionally published authors. And in the episode that will come out next, like I guess like we just recorded it about a month from now, I go into a lot of detail of exactly what I did to market the book. So while I am traditionally published, I always recommend to authors to act as if you are self-published, because unless you are the lead title for your imprint, you are not going to get the grand dam of marketing. You know, you are not going to get this big blitz unless you are the chosen one for that season, and I unfortunately have never been. So the closest I got was with Small Town Monsters, because it was under a new imprint at that time that was being run by the editorial director of all of Random House Children's. Her own book was under that imprint. So because of that, yes, it got a lot of actual advertising and all this push for the imprint itself. The imprint didn't end up taking off, so it is now no longer acquiring books. So, but when Hatchet Girls came out, I was under the expectation that I was going to get the same level of marketing for Hatchet Girls that I got for Small Town Monsters. And by the time I realized that that wasn't happening, I had waited too long. Like, I still did a lot of outreach, I still did what I could, but I hadn't yet found my footing on social media at that time. I was brand new to TikTok, so I didn't have as much of a following to really market the book myself on social media. So with The Silence, by the time I was really writing that, I had gained more of a following on social media. I had seen self-published authors really take off on the app in a way that inspired me and kind of like showed me what you could do to market your book on an online platform. Thankfully, like while I say I was a reporter, I was actually a broadcast journalism major in college. So I have a background in talking to the camera, in editing film, and that does help me when it comes to social media. So it was the first time that I was like, okay, I'm going to go full throttle on TikTok in particular and try to market this book. I had the benefit of being located near the setting, so I went back several times, taking a lot of pictures, taking a lot of videos. I will say, like, I don't feel like my actual videos for my books ever really take off. It's always me talking about publishing in general that kind of takes off. But I do think like still it has allowed me to create a community of people who are very much invested in my videos when they do pop up. And I kind of just went full throttle. So there was another author I met who was really good. I don't know if you've read Jenny Kiefer's This Wretched Valley.
I have
It
not.
was nominated for the Stoker Award this past year for adult. It came out through Quirk Books. If you look up the cover, you'll recognize it. It's purple with like a cliff. What are the people that like a rock climber hanging off a cliff? She created a 1-800 number for her cat, like as if her hikers were really lost and readers could call, like a whole Blair Witch style marketing campaign for this book. She's really, really good at it. So she was the person who I spoke to at StokerCon, and she was like, "You should make a brochure for your school." And she's like, and like it's a real school, not like a just a promotional thing for the book. And so that is where that idea came from. And I made it double-sided, and one side it looks like it's a brochure for the real school, and the other side is promotional. And I printed them a lot earlier than I would have normally, like months earlier. So when I went to events like the American Library Association or any of like the speaking engagements I've had, I had all these marketing materials to bring with me and to give out to try to like generate some buzz. I actually did mail out some of the postcards to like local schools in the Philadelphia area because the book is set here. And it has generated results, mostly because if anyone knows Philly, Philly likes to support the home team. So like because it was such a targeted like local thing, I think I already had like 3 school visits set up because of that. Whereas I hadn't done school visits for my last books. I mean, Hatchet Girls, I probably could have done something similar in the Fall River area, but that's so geographically far from me to go up there for school visits. Whereas
Hmm.
here, I can just drive to them. And I was like, that was the first time where I felt like I could genuinely do a school visit campaign and they would actually welcome me in even though it's a horror novel, because a lot of horror authors aren't invited into high schools. Our books aren't exactly the top of the reading list. But since it's local and it's set in Delco and I can include all this Delco history, the Delco schools will be like, yes, definitely, we want to hear this. So that's helped a lot. And I've developed a couple of media contacts over the years, even going all the way back to Small Town Monsters that I go to, and they will consistently do it. Mainline Today, because I live in the mainline, are the ones that found out that Glen Mills staff, 7 staff members, were still working at the new school. Like they really did a deep dive
Which is
into
still
this
bonkers.
reopening. Yes, I mean, I give them credit because Mainline Today is such a happy like lifestyle. Aren't we pretty in our like fancy cars and outfits type of magazine? And they did a hard hitting news piece on Glen Mills, and I was really impressed. And they put the book in there and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that you were in the. I remember the TikTok because you're like, I need to dress up for this. I don't really do
I
this,
know.
and it was such a really nice looking piece. It was like it was very good. It was very
Yeah.
well done. Also, still creepy because of the area, but like
Uh,
it was so good. You listen to the audiobook reader for the book. Stepped away. Yeah. Okay. So. Wait, you stepped away to listen to the audio? Oh wow, we had one of our viewers were just like, I left this interview to go listen to your book, and get to
it's
chapter 3.
the great voice. I mean, I wasn't even expecting that. When they send you for an audiobook, you're usually sent about 3 narrators to start with. And like, do you like any of those 3? And usually I do pick one. I think Small Town Monsters was the only time I went back to them and said, like, no, do you have anyone else? Because I wanted the voice to sound kind of creepy or eerie. I didn't want it to sound like a teenage girl, like, hey, like some of them sounded a little too California. So when I heard this actor's voice initially, it was not as creepy as she made it for the book. Like I just sort of liked the vibe that she had going for the thriller that she read. And then when I heard the audio, I was like, oh, she went all in. Like I
Yeah,
didn't even hear her use this type of voice when I picked her, and she really did a great job.
yeah. Like I said, chapter 3 hurts,
Yeah.
painful.
There was another, I just listened to an audiobook. It's the Josh Mallerman book that just came out, where the main character is a little girl. What is it called? Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
Josh
It's like
Mallon.
a 7-year-old girl. who gets possessed. It's not We Used to Live here. I can't check my phone because I'm using my phone right now.
We
But
Used
the
to Live Here is actually the
narrator,
next book in our book club. That's what we're picking up right after this. Is We Used to
what,
Live
a
Here.
Josh Malerman book?
No, We Used to Live Here. It's not by
Oh, We
Josh
Used to Live
Malerman.
Here. Yes. So whatever Josh Malerman's most recent book is told entirely from the point of view of a little girl who has an entity living in her closet that she calls Other Mommy. And if that doesn't just scare you right there, like that'll get you right there. And
I'm already
that
not a fan.
the voice actor sounds like the little girl from the Poltergeist. Like she reads the whole thing like we're here, other mommies in the closet. It'll scare the crap out of you. Like I don't think I've ever been scared of an audiobook. I was scared of this audiobook.
So
Uh,
I have a voice actor doing my first book, and she sent me stuff that reminds me. She sent me stuff from one of the stories that we did, and one of the stories is about a teen and like her sisters that have been possessed, or actually they were, it was changeling, so they were just like kidnapped and everything
yeah.
like that. And the way she delivered the voice lines for the kids, like I had to stop it several times because I had to stop it and go, "Ugh," just it creeped me out. And she was so good that I was just like, I forgot that I wrote this. Like it
Oh
was
my God,
it was
I
so
love that.
it was so creepy and visceral. I'm like, why am I so scared? I wrote this. I know how it's going to end, but it's still so creepy. It
Oh, I
just
will have to check that out.
it bothered the shit out of me. It's not out
Is it
yet, but it
out
will.
yet?
It's not yet. I can send you that story though, because she said for the
Okay.
sample. I can send you that. It creeped the shit out of me.
Oh my gosh. It's the
So
reason like you get non people who aren't in the book industry will all the time ask like, "Oh, do you think you'll ever narrate your own book?" And I'm like, and I want to say like you've clearly never listened to an audiobook if you're
yeah.
asking me that question because like that is an actor's job. Like I
Hmm.
can't do multiple voices. Like what do you think? Like what I don't have that skill set. Like
Hmm.
I guess like if I were to ever write a memoir, like I love when the person reads their own memoir because it's their story and you want to hear what lines are emotional to them. But in terms of a novel, like you need a professional actor to put
Yes.
that to work.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I've definitely heard some very subpar audiobooks that like just drive me nuts because it's very much as like, and then she went up the stairs, and then
Yeah.
around, and it was scary, and I'm like, it doesn't sound scary. It sounds like you're just reading this book in your head, and then you have your narrator who makes us cry in chapter 3
Yeah.
because
I
of
mean,
how
to be honest,
horrific it is.
yes. But to be honest, I won't even pick up an audiobook if I see it's the author who's narrating it. And even if they're famous, like Toni Morrison narrates one of her books, and I'm like, nope. Like I love her. She's an icon, but she's not an actress. I'd rather just read the book now and imagine it. Than,
Hmm.
I feel like when you're picking up an audiobook, you want a movie in your
Yes.
ears.
Yes, like one of
Yeah.
my favorite books that I've read, and it's gonna hurt Night. One of my favorite books that I've read as far as an audiobook, Dungeon Crawler Carl, hands down one of the greatest audiobooks ever done, because the man does male voice lines and does women's voice lines so well. I thought it was a full cast audio until like halfway through the book, and I'm like, wait, who else is talking? And then I looked, I'm like, it's one dude. I'm like,
Oh
how?
my God.
How is it so well done with one guy doing all the voices, and they're like wildly different voices? Because like
Yes.
the main character sounds like Patrick Warburton, like doing Kronk
Yeah.
from Emperor's New Groove, but then he talks like the cat, which is a very feminine British accent, and I'm like, I could have sworn that it was a different person.
Uh, I love it. I always recommend if you guys are looking for a good one, The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. That audiobook is phenomenal. It feels like you just listened to like a Netflix limited series because it's a retelling of Carrie, but it's a teenage girl who is biracial and she's living in a town where nobody knows she's passing as white, and it's them finding out that she's black that kicks off her powers and stuff. And it has a podcast going on. It has her point of view. It has all these different characters, and by the end of it, you feel like you've just watched a docuseries. It was so well done with the amount of actors and stuff. It was really cool.
What's the name of that one?
It's called The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. I actually think it's better than Carrie. And because it's more modern, I guess it's like an updated, it's not about her period. So it's a much better, it's got a deeper layer of why she's, been bullied and why her powers have come out. You're kind of more than just like a girl got her period. She went for another layer.
Yeah. I love good audiobooks.
Yes.
It's one thing to write a story and it's such a compelling story, but it adds another level when the audiobook is just that good. And like I said, your book was amazing. I liked Hatchet Girls. Nothing against Hatchet Girls. Hatchet Girls was a great book too. I loved the audiobook for that also, but the silence was a different level. Also, it's so good that we can stop saying fuck Phil because you wrote a much worse character. My God, fuck Young Buck.
And what's so funny? I was just on Facebook, and someone I went to high school with used the term young buck in their Facebook post. I don't know what they were referring to, but I was like, you know what? That just sort of justifies that I even use that as a Delco term, because there are some things that we say that I'm I wonder if it'll resonate outside of us. And it was funny to see somebody use that in there. Look at this young buck on the football field or something like that, and it made me laugh.
But also still fuck Phil.
But it was really interesting to read when I was reading these testimonials of what girls went through who were in these programs, and how they were at the mercy of the people who ran them, and the people who ran them were almost all men. And just imagining these things of them watching you shower, you know what I mean, being locked into solitary confinement. After I wrote the book, my very first signing was in Massachusetts. It was before the book came out, September 13th. I was able to release copies early. And I met all these people at this library, the Spooktastic event. And somebody who bought the book from me was a survivor of a troubled teen program. They didn't tell me that when they bought it. And I talked to everyone in depth. So then I get this DM via Instagram, and it said, hey, it was less than a week later. That's how quickly the person read the book. They were like, I just met you on Saturday and I bought your book, and I just wanted you to know that I'm a survivor of a troubled teen program in Massachusetts. And she was thankfully saying that I did such a good job representing solitary confinement. And she said that when she was in her program, she had to undergo what was called 55-50, meaning they kept her in a bare room for 55 minutes of every hour, and then let her out for 5 minutes, and then put her back in the room. And it was all day, every day, over and over, and over again. And so it was just sort of, one, it was sad to honestly hear that somebody actually went through what I was describing, and they felt that I represented it accurately, because I went as hard as I could on those scenes, and to think that somebody actually went through it. But then also I felt happy that I did it justice. That was always one of my concerns. I didn't want anyone who survived these programs to read the book and feel like I didn't get it. She didn't nail it. You know what I mean? She didn't do it right. She didn't do it justice. And so it was always good to hear that feedback from people who have gone through it.
Yeah, it was extremely well done. And again, I hated this. I hated this character so much. And again, Phil's off the hook for a minute, because Young Buck was so much worse, because you could feel it the way you wrote him. You could very feel it was just he thinks he's the nicest person. He's a nice guy, very much air quotes. He is the nice guy. And the moment you're like, well, I don't like you like that, suddenly it turns, and I was like, it was nails on chalkboard the entire time because I knew it was coming. I was like, it's coming. There's no way it's not coming. And then when it happened, I'm like, I knew it. I knew it was coming. And then when you find out who young Buck is, I'm like, ooh, hated that man.
And
Hated
that
that man.
partially came from reality. When I was talking to my neighbor who worked at Slayton and I was asking him for stories, one of the things he told me was, he's like, the most egregious things that occurred there were because of the guards. I don't think they called them guards. I think they called them counselors. Who
Counselors,
were,
they're not
yeah, who
guards.
were in
Shh.
charge. Slayton operated in a way that, because it had so many kids from the local community, that there were kids who were there full time. They were sent by the court. There were also kids who were there for very minor offenses that they maybe only had to stay during the week, and they could get a pass to go home on the weekends. Or there were people who had the ability to earn a pass to go home.
Mhm.
If and the way that the guards would abuse this, like, one, the guards were dealing the drugs, so they had the drugs, they were dishing them out, and in order to get that pass to go home, they were expecting a lot in return from those girls. And he's
Mhm.
like, the story, he's like, he didn't know about this obviously when he worked there. He was a student, you know what I mean? He was a graduate student just coming in almost on like a research basis. But like what he learned from the people and the kids that he talked to, like, that these guards did to them to get your pass to go home is awful.
Like musical chairs.
Yeah. Oh my God, right?
Dude,
That
that's
came
that whole
partially,
scene. Oh,
uh, so that partially came from Meg when I talked to her, and I was like asking for ideas. I was like, I wanted somebody to be sick enough that that my main character would want to go to extremes to try to save her. And my mind was going to like actual sickness, you know what I mean, somebody getting like meningitis, or you know what I mean, like really
mhm.
getting sick. And she's like, oh no, like you don't need to go that far. She's like, you know how many people I know who were like hospitalized seriously because of a cut, like a cut on their finger, like, you know, like that you've received no medical treatment at all. So she knows of kids who died in trouble teen programs from a flesh wound, from
That's
getting sepsis.
beyond. That is beyond infuriating.
Yeah, so it's not just like, I guess when I'm thinking like you don't get medical care, I'm thinking like for something like, you know, meningitis, something where like you would be sick and they didn't take it seriously. I
Mhm.
didn't even consider that you've received zero, nothing, no medical care
Well, I mean, that's
at all.
kind of like zombie apocalypses that would happen. It was just like you don't get taken out by the zombies, you get taken out by like that little like paper cut that just
Yes,
that didn't heal right,
exposure.
and
Yeah.
or you were digging in the woods for something, and then all this. Yes, it's very unlawful done. It was very very unlawful. But unfortunately, they were run by private organizations with very little oversight, and then people just disappeared. They ran away. They ran away into a 6-foot grave.
Or they just tell that they don't tell the parents how they died. So there are a
Yes.
lot of stories of parents whose children died, whether they were in detention centers, like actual detention center, like Glen Mills, or like the Dozier School in Florida, like the Native American schools. You're notified that your kid died at way after the fact. Sometimes you're notified after they buried the body in this makeshift cemetery on the grounds, and you are told how they died. And this, like, the parents are often from very low income areas. They don't have the money to hire a lawyer to, you know, dig up the body now to do their own autopsies. You need money to do all of that. And so that's how they were getting away with it and how they have gotten away with it. And we just saw it recently with the lynching down in the South. I think, what was it? Colin Kaepernick had to step in to pay for the autopsy of the
Yeah,
kid who was lynched down there. Like, if
because
you don't have
it
the
was just
money,
a suicide, and now like
yes.
the autopsies come back. It was like, oh wait, he had blunt force trauma to the back of his head. And it was just like maybe not suicide,
Yeah, I
because
think
people don't
it's
climb into
all
a
too
tree
often.
and lynch themselves.
And that's one of the things that I do talk about too, when especially when I spoke at ALA, the American Library Association. A lot of parents send their kids to these programs today well intentioned. Okay.
Mm,
So, like, their child may seriously be struggling from something. Okay. And they may seriously be acting out. Who knows what's happening in the household? That they are now sitting across from somebody who is calling themselves an expert. Okay. And they're presenting you with these brochures and they're telling you, like, look, that we've tried everything. You're going to have to try. Look, it's a therapeutic boarding school. Or like it's time for tough love. Send them out in the
mm.
woods, let them see what reality is like. And they convince these parents to do this. And they have no idea how abusive these programs are when they send their kids off. And this is often even worse in like low income districts because if you live in Lower Marion, if you live in a high income district and your kid is struggling and acting out in the classroom, they'll bring in a school psychologist. And the school psychologist will run all of these tests and they'll find out that your kid has ADHD, your kid's on the autism spectrum. They'll find out all of these things that they might be struggling with. Then they'll provide services through our very well funded school district and they will help your kid get everything they need to succeed. What Meg found out was that as a 40-year-old adult, she's like, I wasn't troubled. She's like, I'm autistic and I have ADHD. She's like, that's why I was acting out. Like I wasn't having my needs met. I wasn't being treated for the underlying conditions. And I think if you're in a low income school district and your kid's acting out in the classroom, they don't have a school psychologist. They don't have anyone to go in there. To get your kid privately tested is like $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody has that kind of money. So the kids are then just labeled as a problem and they're in detention over and over again for acting out in the classroom until so many detentions become you sitting across from this person with a wilderness brochure saying it's covered by the state.
That looks like this. They're very happy, and look at them. They're just so sweet. And look, it looks
Yes.
very nice. Your kid will be safe.
Yes. They receive billions of dollars in federal funds from the federal government every year. So some of these programs are genuinely paid for. Like, so you're telling this kid, this parent, like, look, we'll even cover the cost of it in some cases because the government's paying for it.
Cajun was like, yeah, we've had something like that when he grew up. It was called the training school, and the land there has still not been bought, even though it is prime real estate.
Yes.
Same situation.
Yes.
There are bodies there, and nobody wants to sell that property.
I know. I will die on that hill. Like I'm sure there are.
Oh, that's
plenty of
100%.
other
100%. That is exactly what. Like, there was in Alabama, they unearthed a pauper's grave where there was a prison like last year, I want to say, and they found 49 unmarked graves and counting of people who just disappeared from the prison system. Like
Yeah.
they weren't even listed as like they died in prison. They just disappeared, and one family didn't find out what happened to their loved one for 2 years or something like that. Like they just stopped hearing from them in prison, and then it was like, oh yeah, they died.
No, it's awful. I mean, there's the land that this school sits on. Like I said, it goes back to William Penn. It's called Slayton Farm because William Penn gifted it to Henry Slayton, a Quaker, and so then they built these farmhouses on it in the early 1800s, and no new structures have really been built there since. So it's a lot of earth, is what I'm saying. Like there's a lot of earth to be covered. Yeah.
Apparently, Rose, her boyfriend, actually works at one of these programs that exists in
really?
Utah. And now she's like, now I'm sus of any story he has ever told me about these places. And Cajun says,
I don't know.
yeah.
I can't speak for all of them. I have a cousin who worked at Glen Mills. I know people who've worked in these programs, especially if you're in the social work segment or where you're actually are providing psychological counseling for the kids. You often aren't seeing what's going on at nighttime. You're not there overnight. So like my neighbor said, I was there, I was in an office, the kids would fight over who got to come in and sit with me. And looking back, he can now realize why they all would rather sit in his room than do literally anything else. It got to a point where kids, when he was only there for such a short time, he said in his last week, there were a group of kids who showed up and they were like, "Are you Mr. So and so?" They're like, "We heard about you when we were in waiting to be sentenced by the judge. Other kids had talked and they said, hey, if you get the opportunity, try to go to Slayton because they've got this one counselor there who's actually really nice." And he's like, I felt like my heart was ripped out because these are foster care kids and stuff. Like he's like that they chose to come here because they heard of me, and I was already leaving because I was just a student. Like
Oh,
I wasn't a permanent employee and stuff. But so there are people there who are just working with the kids and genuinely trying to help them during the day, and they don't know what goes on after 5 o'clock.
according to Rose, her boyfriend is a care coordinator.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, we're both like,
I
it
would say
could be a good one.
Paris Hilton's documentary specifically about Utah. She probably delves more into that, and I think the program documentary is out there somewhere too.
Mm,
So they know a little bit more about that. I know a little bit more about Pennsylvania and what they did around here because there was even like there was a pay to play scheme going on in Pennsylvania where the judges, especially up in an area of the Northeast called Wilkes-Barre, the judges went in together with like a real estate developer and this guy, and they built a juvenile detention center of their own. And so then they were the owners of this detention center that he was then sentencing people to go to, in addition to getting kickback. The judges were making all of this money off of sending kids away to these programs for the most minor infraction you could think of. We're talking like stealing a stop sign, or spray
mm-hmm,
painting on a stop sign on
mm-hmm.
your block, and something you would normally get a citation for. They were getting sent away for 6 months because of this pay to play scheme going on in Pennsylvania, and that included sending kids to Glen Mills and Slayton. Yeah.
That was an SVU episode
Yeah. Oh,
where
it's awful.
a judge was like sending children to this farm or the most minor infractions and basically like bumping up their sentences for like the most like nothing stuff. And you said Wilkes-Barre, my co-author for our books is from that area, so she would
Oh,
probably know
really?
about some of that stuff as
Oh my
well.
God. Look into it. So I just read a book called Shackled. It's a YA nonfiction. It's pretty short. I like tore through it in about a day, and it's all exposing what was going on up in Wilkes-Barre, this pay-to-play scheme. And they're in front of the judges. So imagine you did something minor, like spray paint on a stop sign, and even the cop is telling you you're going to get a slap in the wrist. Don't worry about
Mm,
it. So you go in there, you plead guilty because that's what you've been told to do. You have no attorney with you because you can't afford it, and they convince you to sign some paper before you're coming in. You're like, you don't need an attorney, right? You're good. So they sign this paper, and the judge says, okay, can you count the number of buttons on your shirt? And the girl would be like, what? And so she'd count them. She'd be like, 10. He's like, all right, you're away for 10 months. And like send her away.
Jesus.
And the amount of kids, like he would say, like, can you count the amount of windows over there? They're like, oh, you're gone for 7 months. And would just send them away. And then this started this cycle because the schools got more money the longer they could keep them in there.
Mm.
And so you had this girl who at 13 spray painted a stop sign, and now she's 23 and she's never made it out of the system because she kept getting
Oh
all
my
these
god.
infractions to keep her in the system, and like she can't get a job, and now she's a convict, and it ruined her life forever. And by the time they figured it out and the judges got in trouble, like their lives are ruined, the kids' lives are ruined. Like they're like, it's great that you finally caught them now, but like how does that help me at this
Mm.
point? The damage is done. Yeah.
Oh my god. That's yeah, that's horrific stuff. It's but it makes for a great story.
Yeah. It's really sad to think of like that, and that's really one of the things that I wanted to like touch in with the book, why it's called Even the Silence, because I feel like there are many ways that like women are silenced and kids are silenced and stuff, and like these programs and abuse tend to feed off of nobody speaking up and nobody saying anything, and that's how it you talk about it decades after it happens to you, not when you're going through it.
Hmm. they're saying that the training school that was in Mississippi was for the boys. It was for the state, and they had a girls' school that was north, that was 30 minutes north of that. So very much that Glen Mills, Slayton Farms kind of situation where you had that kind of stuff. But anyway, guys, we could talk about this for literally hours. But we want to thank Diana again. We will have you on again when your next book comes out, because we love your writing. We love when you come on here, because like I said, we can have these stories and we can talk forever. We appreciate you so very, very much, guys. Again, if you have not read it already, I don't know why you haven't, but here's your chance again. It is The Silenced. It is out now. If you go through, I will put the link in Discord if you want to go and get a signed copy. You can go through what is it, Malvern? Malvern, or is it Haverford?
Haverford.
Haverford.
Yeah, Haverford. Yeah. So you'll get a signed copy, and you'll get all of the book swag too.
Yes, all the little stuff that I showed you, all of that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And we'll be giving away a signed copy as well later on. Yeah, that's one of the things we've always tried to do, is try to get the signed copies. But I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time again.
Yeah.
Again, Diana Rodriguez Wallach, amazing YA horror. We have all of the stuff here. Check out Hatchet Girls. Check out The Silenced.
Thank you so much for having me. I love being on. You guys are awesome.
And we will catch you guys next time.